I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Alright, so I pretty much hashed out the lighting for the cockpit. It was a bit tricky to get the glow in there to show up, to give it the glow, faint red that I want to see. So to get a little more of that red reflection, I painted some silver, chrome silver around that base, around the chair in the bottom of the cockpit. So that'll reflect the light a little bit more. I did have some field blue in there, and it was just it wasn't really reflecting the light any, so and then I went ahead and right now I have it temporarily put into place. I don't have the wires permanently run down through it yet, but they're attached together, so I can show you a little test here. I have the sides in as well, and I have them both in the ends there as I showed in the previous video. And I got some more clear red on there to give it just the right amount of red. You can see that one back there in the back. And probably better from this side. Yeah, that one right there. You can see glowing red. So, okay. All right. We put the battery on this, and I'll show you how those are going to look before I put them together. Okay, so there's the red light there in the back, looking at it from the bottom. And there it is, the front. Okay, and if I flip it over, you can see that there, and that little flat ledge there at the bottom, I painted that chrome silver as well to catch more of that light from right there. And then likewise, there's the light from the cockpit from the front. Okay, cool. So I think that turned out really well. Let me go ahead and put these two halves together, put the pilots in, and I'll show you how that's all going to look. Okay, and here's that lit cockpit with the pilots in before I put the canopy on. So that looks pretty cool. And that light's mostly hidden. If you look, oh, sorry, I'm just holding it, the battery with my fingers. If you look fairly close, I mean, if you look in there at a certain angle, you can see the red light, but it's really hard to get that in there without some of it coming through. But I like how that turned out. Obviously, it's not going to light the entire cockpit because there's a lot of blacks in there, and it's really hard to light those up. But I think it looks pretty cool. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and put the canopy on, and then I will let me show you that in dark a little bit. That looks pretty cool. Let me put the canopy on, and then I'll show you how this looks with that, and then we'll turn the lights off and look at it without with the canopy on as well. Okay. Okay, and here's the lit cockpit with the canopy on and the figures inside. And I'll show you that without the lights in a moment, but even with the lights on, it comes out pretty well. The same with that reflects off of the pilot there. It's a little bit, well, you can kind of see it there, but it reflects off of that roof that I painted with the silver and the clear red as well. So, okay. All right, so that looks pretty cool. All right, let me show you that with the lights out. Okay, and here's the red light in the cockpit with the lights off. You can see I got a pretty nice little glow in there. You can see it especially when you look straight down into it. And if you look at the right angle, you're going to see the red light glowing there, but probably not going to do anything with that because it is kind of hard to see, but I definitely get the effect I want right there. Just a bit of a red glow against that black, so I think that turned out pretty cool. Alright, so pretty much have that part all hashed out, and I can start putting the kit together and finishing up with the weathering. Alright, and here's a test fitting of the parts before I start putting it all together and run the wires down through the bottom. I really like that combination of the black and the silver and the reds. Get a better focus there, there we go. I think I am going to leave that back grill pretty much just a nice silver like that. And probably for the most part, most of the kit I'm just going to leave it as almost like a new finish. A clean finish. I'll probably dull down those red ones there with some flat coat, but other than that, I really like how that looks. So we'll see. I'll play with it. I still have to get the rest of the stickers on it and do some more of the metallizing of the different parts, like the guns here and such. But that's looking pretty awesome. It's definitely looking pretty cool. It's a really nice contrast between the silver and the black. It's pretty awesome. So, all right, so that's coming together really well. All right, let me start getting this wired together and just test fit a few more parts, and then should be ready to start getting it all finished up and get the stickers on. Okay. All right, so here's the pretty much completed first order Snowspeeder. All the construction is done on it, and I can still take it apart as needed, but I have the wiring coming down through the bottom, which is going to go through the stand to the base, and that's how I'm going to light it. And likewise, the base will have a switch on it, probably just this switch here, but all right, there's my lights in it. I'm real pleased with those lights. As I said previously, it's hard to get a full glow in the cockpit, but I like how it looks. It's pretty cool. It's going to give me what I want. So a little bit more of the detailing and some other metallizing type of weathering and that sort of thing. I still have some more of the stickers to put on, but I have most of them on here. The red one's there on the top, as you can see, on the front. I put those little stabilizing flaps or whatever they're called on the back there. I'm going to probably highlight the arms for those with some metallizers as well. I want to do a little bit more on the back engines and that sort of thing. But pretty much the construction is complete. So before I do any more of the painting and weathering, I'm going to start looking at some ideas for the base and come up with that. So let me start working on a little bit of that and get the basic structure of it, and then decide what I'm going to do as far as the landscape. Probably something snow related, but obviously we don't really see this ship in any movies. It really doesn't exist at this point. So we'll see. Maybe some ideas from the Last Jedi, the latest movie. So okay, all right. Let me work on that a bit, and then we'll see how that's coming along. But some great progress on this kit, and we should be able to get this wrapped up here soon. All right. All right. So now that the kit is pretty much done, a little bit more weathering or highlighting, but nothing major, and I have it all wired up. I'm going to start working on the display base, and I've come up with an idea of trying to reproduce the planet Crate from the new movie The Last Jedi, basically with a white crackled base with some red underneath, and maybe a spot where the red is being kind of scraped and blowing up in the air. And I have a few ideas on how to reproduce that. So I've been working on some ideas of making the cracked base, and it's a bit tricky. I'm getting closer to it, Here's a few examples. That one didn't work out at all, but that one worked out pretty well, and that one pretty well as also. And what I'm using is a material that's designed to crackle. It's a crackle medium. And the way it's supposed to work is you put down a base coat of acrylic. When it dries, you put this over top of it and let it dry, and then you put your third coat, and it's supposed to crackle. Been having some trouble getting it to work, and I think I've kind of narrowed it down. And here's another test, which isn't the right colors, but you can see that the pinkish color there cracked. The gray ones here did not, and that one in the middle did. So the difference is, these are Tamiya paints. This is Vallejo paints. So I don't know what the differences are. That one is as well. I just don't have the right colors right now. But for some reason, the Vallejo colors work on this. The Tamiyas do not. I don't really quite understand. They are all acrylics, but not quite sure. So I need to get some more Vallejo paints. In the end, what I want to do is come up with a kind of an off-white sort of a thing. That was my first attempt with just the white. The crackle looks pretty cool, and the red underneath it, but I don't really like the stark white. So I want to do something more like this. That's what I was going with the deck tan, but it just didn't work with the Tamiyas. That also is the white. So I'm trying a couple different things. What I'll probably end up doing, and that's kind of what I did on this piece right here, is I have a base of styrofoam, and then on the top, on foam board, on foam core on the bottom. On the top, I just poured some resin on it, some clear resin that I have, and let it harden to give it a nice smooth finish, thinking that it was the smooth finish that I needed to get that to crackle, and it seems to work, but I think it is the paints. But I do like the idea of the resin. It's kind of cool, rather than just trying to paint over styrofoam, because you get that pattern of the styrofoam still underneath. So, all right. So what I might do, I'm still debating on how to go about it, whether I'm going to use styrofoam or not. But I've already poured some resin rocks with some of the resin as well from the. Let's see. I have a rock mold right here, different rock shapes. That's that real big one right there. So I made several of those. I have several rocks out of resin that I can do. And the resin I'm using is just some clear resin I had, some color cast resin. And actually kind of like it because still not deciding if Crate is frozen. It seems to be, because at one point we see some snow. I know that it's supposed to be salt, that kind of thing, but it's just pretty well barren. So I like these rocks this way. I'm going to kind of leave them this way and make them look kind of iced up. Maybe just put a wash of rock color over them, that sort of thing. So, and then I'll have those patterned around the edges, that sort of thing, on it. And then once I get the, before I get the base on there, or the base surface, I'm going to get this put down into it at an angle and secured. And I'm going to use the kit part for the stand. And I still have to drill some holes through it so I can run the wiring down through it. Not quite sure if it's going to be that high, probably not. I'm probably going to cut this down a bit. But I can embed this down into some resin or into the styrofoam so it's permanently attached. So, okay. All right, so several ideas going. This is the general rush shape that I want to do. So I'm going to play with a little bit more and get some ideas on how to put that onto there. Okay. Okay, so here's some basic shapes I've started with. I carved out a section of styrofoam in the back, and I just have some of the resin rocks on their kind of positioning, sort of what I want them to look like. And once I have the kit in place, it'll be angled like this, like it's just coming over this hill here and coming over this plane. And then what I'll do, I have to have this permanently attached, so I'm going to have the base, whatever support for the ship glued into the base here, the wiring coming back, and I'll have a section carved out of the bottom of this and underneath the foam board to have the battery, the coin battery, in the switch. Excuse me. It's only going to be one battery and one switch, and it'll be accessible from the bottom of the base. But I have to have everything all glued into place and the electronics all in place before I put the rest of the diorama material on top. And what I still want to kind of do is go with some of the resin that I can pour over onto here. The resin I'm using, the color cast, it's some extra stuff I have, so I don't mind wasting it a little bit. It starts drying and it's setting up in about a minute. So I can do small batches, and I can actually smooth it along this and do different portions, work my way down before it starts hardening. And it hardens pretty quickly. Here's a little piece that I did, which I was doing a test on, and it's just drying right now with some red. But you can see you can come up with some cool looking textures on it, or terrain. And once I get my other Vallejo paints, probably go with like an ivory or even an off-white, something like that. I'm going to test it on this to see how that looks. And this is just resin on top of foam core. So that's what I'll be doing on most of this. And I'll just have it kind of overlapping and filling in the gaps on the styrofoam. So I have a bit of a hill, and then it comes down into a plane. And I probably won't have any kind of rocks or anything down here. We'll see. But I do have more rocks I can also use on the sides of these, and maybe even down here. We'll see how that works. But okay, so we're coming towards the general shape. I want to finalize the kit and get it in place where I want it to be, and then we'll start looking at putting some resin on here. Okay. All right, so I carved out some basic styrofoam shapes for the elevated sections. I have that back piece there, and I have two side pieces here. And once I get them glued on, they're going to be built up a bit. And of course, when I do the resin, it's going to come up and join with that, so it looks like these are naturally molded into the base. Let me turn that around a bit. And these aren't glued down yet either, so hold on a second, let me see. Okay, kind of give you an idea of that. So it's kind of a cool shape. Gives it some character, and then the speeder will be right in the center here, kind of curved, as if it's just coming over this hill into this little valley here. So okay, and I also have a hole cut into the bottom. That's going to accommodate my battery and coin battery and the switch underneath. And then I have a little groove right there that goes into it, and that'll come right out. You can see right there with the wires. I only have 2 wires coming through. All right, so I'm pretty satisfied with the way these contours are for now. Let me go ahead and get those glued onto place, and then we'll be able to start looking at putting the base on there. The rod or whatever I'm going to come up with. Might do like a hollow rod, like an aluminum rod, possibly. We'll see. Alrighty. Alright, so now that these parts have all dried in place and they're glued, working on the stand for the kit, and I decided not to use the kit part. It's a little big. I was even going to cut it down a bit, but it's still too big. It's still too thick and obvious, so I decided to adapt a piece of aluminum tubing. And I curved it, I just bent it so it would be at a 90-degree angle. And you can see I have a piece of the wiring coming through, and it goes through and it comes out the bottom. in the little battery compartment that I've made. And that's going to be trimmed down, obviously, and wired in to the switch and the coin battery. So, and then what I did was I took the little piece for the from the kit that clicks into it, and I drilled a hole at an angle so that it rests on top of this, and it's going to be glued in place here briefly in a moment. And then I have the wire coming through, and that's movable to come up into the kit. So I figured the best way to do it, since I don't want the kit attached on when I put in the resin and paint it and paint all the rest of this. So I want to get this all put into place, and I can even move this at an angle depending on how I want it to go once I get that piece on there. And then that's going to be glued in as well with some epoxy, so that all of it is going to be nice and solid before I put the resin over top of it. And then this will basically just stick right onto there. And let's see if I can get it on there. Okay, well, it's going to be sort of like this, and I'm going to have it angled. So, okay. So let me go ahead and get that glued together, get this piece glued on top, and then we'll be ready to get it glued into place, and then I can start working on the resin. Alright, so there we go. So that's in there nice and solid. And it'll be more solid when I pour resin over this whole area and encase it in about maybe 1/4 of an inch of resin. So I have the wire there, and this wire can move through that tube, and then underneath it's coming out of the bottom there. There's the tube ready for the wiring. Okay, so that's all ready to go. And what I'm going to probably end up doing, like I just showed, is leave this off while I'm doing all that. And then what I can do is I can thread that through here and just wire the top wires into it. Let me show you here. Yeah, so these wires are at the top, so I'll trim these down and wire them together like I did here. And then just when I'm ready to put the top on, I'll just put it all together and then snap the kit together. It'll have a little bit of play, and then I can just stick it down onto the base. Alright, so that's ready to go. I'm going to continue working on this and get some resin on it, and then go from there. Alright. Alright, so I got the resin applied and it's hardened. Kind of give you a look of that. It came out pretty smooth. There's a few rough spots, but not too bad. I can clean it up. And once I get the crackled paint on it, it won't be noticeable anyway. So, okay, let me go ahead and get the Snowspeeder, and I'll show you how that's going to look. Alright, so I have the resin put on and it's hardened. It's got a nice smooth finish on it. A few rough spots around the edges I gotta clean up once it dries completely. But I went ahead and put the Snowspeeder on it just to kind of show. It's not snapped together all the way and the wires are hanging out. But there you go. That's generally how it's going to look. There we go. All right. Okay, so I think I have the crackled finish nailed down, so I'm ready to go ahead and apply it onto my resin section on the base here. What I did is to just make sure that it's going to work. I got some paints that were from the same company, Folk Art, and what I got was for the red, appropriately enough, I've got Imperial Red, which is going to work out well. It's a really nice red. It's kind of cool. And then I got some gray, some light gray, and I'm mixing that with a little bit of titanium white to make it a little bit lighter gray. I don't want just pure white on there. The gray is a little bit better. And since it's from the same company, they work a lot better. So I did a few tests just to check it out. And here's one over top of the styrofoam piece I did previously. So that turned out really nice. You can see the nice crackled view. It's a lighter gray, but you can see the red sticking through. So that's pretty cool. I like that a little bit there as well. I also did some on the the resin piece that I did over top of the other painted piece. So that turned out good as well. Kind of the trick to it is you don't want to brush on the top coat. You want to stick it on, brush it on first, and then dab down with the brush to remove all the brush strokes. And I think that's what makes the difference. And that's what I did on this piece here. And it's a nice kind of an even crackle, which looks more natural. It's almost like breaking up of ice, that kind of thing, with the red underneath. So that's pretty cool. It still has a little bit of the glossy underneath the red parts from the crackle medium. So that's the look I'm going for. That looks pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just kind of go for it and start getting this going. So I'm going to start with some of the Imperial Red, and I'm going to thin it down a little bit because it's a very thick paint. So I'm going to thin it down so I get a little bit better coating. All right, let me get that on there, and we'll let that dry, and then we'll get some of the crackle medium on there and see what we can do. All right, so I have the red painted on and it dried, and I went ahead and put on a coating of the crackle medium. And I'll let that dry as well. So that goes on clear. As you can see, it's kind of shiny. And I also glued the resin rocks on the back in the way that I want them to be. So that looks kind of cool. It's a nice little landscape in the back there. So you can see how shiny that is right now. So I'm going to let that dry overnight, get it nice and dry. And then I'll be ready to go ahead and put on some of the light gray over top and hopefully get a nice crackle effect in this little part in here. So, okay. I'm going to let that all dry, and then we'll get the other paint on there, and then I'll be able to, once that dries and finishes, I'll be able to start putting on the rest of the paint and the effects. I got another material which I'm going to try out. It's called Snowtex, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of a white snow looking material, and it dries like snow. Get that one off there a second. Take a look here. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Oh, it looks like snow inside of there. It's kind of a paste, and you can smooth it on and spread it around. So what I'll do is, once I get the crackle effect all completed, I'm going to go ahead and use the snow to do around the edges and smooth it into the rest of this, and probably just build it up onto these as well. The rocks will be painted, and I'll have snow around those also. So okay, so coming along really well. Getting ready to almost finish this up here. All right. All right, here you go. That really worked out well. So I put on the gray paint. I got a really wide brush so I could apply it very quickly. I think that's kind of the trick to it. You got to get a coat on fast before it starts drying, and you don't want to see little spots showing up. So so it's crackling very nicely. That looks pretty awesome. Look at that. You can see the red cracking through. And it's still drying, so as it dries even more, it'll look pretty even cooler. So I think that turned out really well. It looks very organic. And like I said, we don't really see the surface of crate very much. We're just familiar with the white surface, and it gets red when they scrape it. So, all right. So I'm really liking how that looks. I'm going to let that dry completely here. Probably going to do around the edges as well, just the little edges around here, just the little bits that are exposed. The back of it's going to be all the styrofoam. So I got the rocks glued on the back, so I'm ready to start putting on some of the Snowtex and getting those painted, and this is coming close to getting wrapped up. I also put some of the paint. I ended up mixing about 50% gray and 50% white. Oh, not too close there, sorry. From Folk Art, and it's the same company that makes the crackling medium, so it worked perfectly. So some titanium white, some light gray. I just mixed about 50-50, thinned them down quite a bit because these paints are fairly thick, and then applied it on broadly with a broad brush, a wide brush, and then just kind of let it dry. So there we go. It's looking really good. Back up a bit. All right. So let me get on with the rest of this and I think this is going to turn out pretty beautifully. Alright, and here is my pretty much finished diorama for my first order Snowspeeder. And it's kind of a bit of a take on the Planet Crate from The Last Jedi. So I have the snow text material all around the edge on the raised portions. I did some weathering on the rocks, and I used several different Tamiya paints, from German gray to several other lighter grays, even some Hall red and some white, and just kind of dry brushed over top of the darker colors. Generally you want to start with the darker ones and just progressively get lighter. So I think those look pretty cool. They go nicely with the rest of it. And my cracked ice, or whatever you want to call that, with the light gray over the red. It looks out really good. Alright, and so I'm ready to go ahead and get the model put onto that. I have the battery underneath with the switch, so I started stripping the wires here at the top so I can go ahead and get them hooked into there. So I did one extra little thing with lighting at the last minute, which I think turned out pretty cool. So let me show you that real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get the kit put onto here. Alright, so I added one more little light. Here it is from the inside right there on the back. And what it is underneath is a little scoop, and right inside of it I went ahead and put a really cool looking red light. I think that looks really awesome. Not sure what that would be exactly on there, but it looks really good. You have that little scoop right there on the bottom. So right underneath it I put that light, so when it's on here and it's angled, that's going to look really, really cool. Alright, so let me go ahead and get this all wired together and put on the stand, and go ahead and reveal the finale here. Alright, and here is my finished First Order Special Forces Snowspeeder on its custom base. There's the snow and rocks in the background. Try to get it close up. You can see the red glow inside there. It's a little difficult to see underneath it at this angle, but if you look under here, there's the, there we go, there's the bottom red light glowing there as well. Get a couple of angled shots of this. Okay, there's from the top. Looks pretty cool. Here's a shot from the side. It's a nice little back angle. And I realize there's one more thing. I still gotta put the little gun on the back there, but that's not a hard detail to finish up. Get that painted and thrown on there. So okay, but looking pretty cool. All right, this was a pretty fun build. It was fun to be inventive with it and come up with my own idea for a design that doesn't really exist at this point, but the First Order stealing a Snowspeeder and turning it into their own, or not even stealing it, they might have just bought some, made them First Order. So I might be looking here in the near future to do a First Order X-Wing fighter. I have the 172 scale, so I might even do that as well. So, all right, but this is going to wrap this up for today, for this week, I mean. And thanks to all my subscribers. Happy holidays to everyone. And I hope you enjoyed my unique Snowspeeder build. All right, everybody have a great rest of the year. And this also, as I said, is for the model shop group build for Star Wars, so I'll be posting these on that site as well. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day.